we are excited to have you because you are one of our amazing village people and amazing small group leaders. But I don't know if everybody knows who you are, what you do, a little bit about you. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you take it away for a second.
Yeah.
Who
Well,
is
I'm really
Colleen?
excited. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yay. I am Colleen and I live in Nolensville in McFarland Point. And I grew up in Nashville. I went to Hillsborough High School and I went to Belmont for college. And I graduated from Belmont and went away to grad school and then came right back home. And I married my high school sweetheart, although we were not together in college, but I married him after I got back from grad school. And we have three kids, Paul, Georgia, and baby June. And she's not a baby anymore. She's a toddler now, but many of you know them. And certainly they know you all. And let's see, for a job, I work for a company called Fired Up Productions, and I've been with them pretty much since our inception. And we are a small firm that works in higher education. We work a lot with fraternities and sororities and nonprofit organizations to help their organizations grow. We do that through technology, education, and marketing and design. And I'm a senior staff member there, and my role changes all the time. I work part time, so about 3 days a week, and I do everything from coaching our young staff on how to do their job, all the way to selling and managing big major contracts of five figures and 6 figures and above. Um, and then my favorite part of my job is doing education and training. And I train on things from mental health to retaining and engaging members to relationship building to conflict resolution, all different types of stuff that has to do with the heart. And I'm really grateful that I get to do that work. And I work a lot with, you know, 18 to 25-year-olds and then young executives. And it's a huge blessing. And I really love it. I really love my job.
So I'm wanting to ask everybody this during our odd times that we find ourselves. I'm kind of curious, what are you learning about yourself right now?
Right. Listen, y'all, COVID-19 is so weird. This time is so weird. Everybody keeps saying that. They say things like unprecedented. And it's so strange. And, for the foreseeable future, an abundance of caution, right? Like, and my family has done this before, Chris. Shelter in place. When I was a young woman and pregnant with my first child, we learned he was going to be born with congenital heart disease and that he was going to need surgery when he was born several times. And the doctors told us that we would need to shelter in place. And that for me didn't just mean, I was worried about his heart. Please don't misunderstand me. But I was really concerned about my loss of my loss of agency. Like, what do you mean shelter in place? Like, I can't just up and Eli go to Chick-fil-A when I want to. I can't just leave and go up to, take a class here or there, go get coffee with a friend, or but you have to shelter in place. Like, what does that even mean? And I had 20 weeks to prepare for that. I had 20 weeks to get all the Netflix and all the bottled water. I had my nails done and the big bottles of skincare products. You know what I mean? And I told everybody, we're sheltering in place. And we had a meal train and we had all this stuff. And you didn't have that. So
Not this time.
it was like, yeah, yeah. You didn't have that. I mean, man, it was like, yeah, everything's fine. And then nothing was fine just in an instant. And so you asked me, what am I learning about myself? Well, I'm really trying hard to not just be sympathetic, but empathetic to what everybody is experiencing right now, and to imagine no preparation. Right? It's with it. I'm learning. I identify as an introvert. I'm an introverted extrovert, and I'm learning that that is true. That I have a lot of energy during this time, lots of time to reflect and love. And I also have a wonderful spouse that is taking some of the load, but I am learning that that is absolutely how I identify. And I think, um, you know, I am learning to that when I have more space to stop doing so much stuff, that I have more space to think and be with my thoughts. And when I allow myself to do that, and not be afraid of that, can be scary sometimes. You're alone with yourself and you're like, oh, did I just think that? That's terrible. But I also am able to then see the need in front of me, or see the desire in front of me, or look to, how I can be a vessel, be the hands and feet of Jesus, right? And I'm not perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination, but I found in this time I'm learning that silence is super important, actually. And that, quite frankly, I probably need to slow down.
Hmm. I think that's interesting because a lot of times we choose no silence and we actually try to fill it as much as possible. And I'm finding myself doing that even sheltering in place. That
100%.
I'm doing everything I can to not be silent. And it's in the silence that I think we can actually hear what's really going on. And I think that's maybe why we don't want it. Because sometimes it can be hard. And sometimes our emotions tell us things about ourselves that we would like to ignore, but we need to pay attention to.
Right.
So I think that's so fascinating that this is not a new experience for you in
No,
many
not at
ways.
all.
I don't
Fifth
think
time.
that's true for many for many people. So I think you have some wisdom that maybe you can share with us that maybe we need. So
So,
I'm curious, like, what would you share? What would you tell us about this, since this isn't
so
your first go around?
yeah, I mean, I think your instinct, and even mine during this one, because I was like, your instinct is to be like, okay, what do I need to do during this time? Like, I need to do something. I'm going to write that book. I'm going to run that marathon. I'm going to clean out that closet. I'm going to learn to really violin, bring it home, whatever it is. Your instinct is to feel like I got to do all the things, right? And the reality is that that's okay. You go for it if those are things you want to do, but you're surviving a pandemic right now. Like, shelter in place, it means like to stop and stay where you are and survive, get through it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to be gentle to yourself and kind to yourself. And that is my biggest advice. And it sounds kind of like Lulu, but like legit. Pick one thing to do every day that you know you can accomplish. So, but like, if you're feeling good, do three things, right? But do that thing, and maybe one day it's taking a shower, and maybe one day it's like finishing the paper that was pseudo assigned to you, right, in your online packet. And maybe one day it is like creating an amazing work of art, and then the next day it's just like, well, I got out of bed and I had some good breakfast. But those little things, just celebrate those and be
Mm-hmm.
kind to yourself and be gentle to yourself, and know that, like, here's the thing in life, but in particular in a trauma crisis, a pandemic, right, a shelter in place situation, every single person is doing the best that they can in that moment. Everybody. And maybe it's like, not that great right then. And that's okay. Like, we have to assume that everybody is trying their best.
I think that that is really helpful because I'm sure we all saw this, that immediately it was like, well, what are you going to achieve now that you have all this free time?
Right. Yeah.
And I think I've seen less and less of that as it has gone on,
Oh,
because
right.
people
People are
more and more have been
like,
like, oh, this isn't free time. This is a pandemic. This is different.
and I think if you do create some things, right? We have a youth that has created some incredible things, right, on his digital printer, and his sister is so awesome. She's an eighth grader, anyway. But like that's great. Like, go for it, dude. Like, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should create if that's what you're led to do and what you're called to do. But don't pressure yourself, like, to do whatever. You
Yeah.
know.
No, I think that is very wise to just give yourself some grace, some patience, um, to take care of each other and ourselves. I think is really, really important, because we are really good at putting pressure on ourselves, and have been since before this. We live in that culture of just like achieve, achieve, achieve. So this is a whole new thing. Through your experience up until now of sheltering in place and stuff, was there something, um, that helped you like connect with God through all of this? Because not only is sheltering in place in general hard, but you are also dealing with a child having heart surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, right, so like, I'll just be totally vulnerable with you and say, like, it's so easy to be angry at God, isn't it? Isn't it? To say to him, why did you do this? Or what did you create here? It's so easy to say, I don't, I don't like this, or this is not for me, or if you were really for me, then this would have happened. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay to feel that. And I think, as the pastor said this morning, I love that guy. I can't think of his name, but anyway, that was a
Alex.
great sermon. Thank you, Alex.
Yep.
And what did he say? You talk to him like your father, right? And I did that often. Like I often was like, what is wrong here, right? Like what is going on here? You speak to him in that way. But I also think that what I learned was that over time, I learned that bad things don't happen because of him. They happen in spite of God, and that he is able to walk with us through those things.
Yeah.
He didn't look down at me and say, well, I'm going to punish Colleen and see what I can do there, and I'm going to make this hard for her. Like he loves me and he wants what's best for me, and he wants me to survive and be on the other side of things. And so it becomes just of paramount importance that we remember that and that we are reminded of that. And when those ugly things come in and we're like, what did I do to deserve this? And I can't, that we have to remind ourselves, like, if that's not from him, right? Like anxiety and all that, yuckiness is not from the Lord. And that's not what he wants from us.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I learned. And I think, I really learned that I belong to him. I'm his daughter, and that he's seeking me. He is wanting me. And over again, I found how he was so within every step of our journey and my journey.
I love that. I think it's really easy to, like you said, yell and be angry at God and feel like that's bad. But the Bible, as we've talked about before, is full of stories of people who are angry and shaking a fist at God. And God doesn't run away from that. God shows up in the pain, in the mess. It seems like when everything is broken, that's when God shows up in super real and tangible ways. So I like what you were saying about sometimes we're like, well, everything happens for a reason, which kind of implies that like God did it all. And I don't think that's how that works. I think God can use anything to bring life out of it. But I think God first shows up in the mess and says, this sucks, I'm sorry. And I'm going to be with you.
And it's that concept of, sitting with you in that space. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's that presence that really is that game changer, that no matter what, God is with us. And that, when we were talking, that reminds me of a prayer that you brought up. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah. Want me to talk? Yes. So Chris asked me to tell you what my favorite Bible verse is. And listen, y'all, I got to be honest. I didn't really start going to church until I was 16. My dad identifies as Buddhist. My mom's not super religious. And so I started kind of going to church to help out in the childcare. And I didn't have the youth group experience, I didn't have any of that. And I don't have, I'm not a learned biblical scholar. So I don't just off the top of my head, I'm not oh, well, Psalm 22 or whatever. I don't even know what that is. But I said, the prayer that I love the most, and not to say I don't study the Bible, because I do. I can identify the area in the Bible that I love, but I'm not I don't memorize it like perhaps some of my other friends have. Anyway, this prayer that I love, that I prayed so much during our time with Paul, and that I still continue to pray in my life, is, as it turns out, the prayer of St. Patrick. And St. Patrick was a dude that I've been doing some research here, but I think he was a dude that was kind of grew up in a lot of affluence. And he was, he was kind of a brat. And then over time, he came to know God. And what I most resonate with St. Patrick on is that he was always, as a pastor, always felt less than. Felt like, am I doing this right? Am I worthy to do this? And certainly as a speaker and trainer, I feel that all the time. Every time I do something, I think, oh, what did I, am I the right person in this space? And that just kind of like humility and self doubt really like resonates with me. So the prayer of St. Patrick is, Chris, you want to tell us that?
Oh, sure, yeah. So,
Yeah,
so
I love prayer.
it's entirely a prayer of remembrance that God is with us, and so it basically lays that out in the prayer. And so it says, Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lay down, Christ when I sit up, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of everyone who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in every eye that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me. And I think that's so beautiful because it's like everywhere around me, within me, through me, when I'm awake, when I'm asleep, like everywhere. Christ,
Everywhere.
there's a great song, Christ Be All Around Me, that is this prayer, basically. But I think it's so beautiful that in a time when it's really easy to sink into ourselves, to feel isolated, literally, to remember God is with us. And I think that is such a huge lesson that you're bringing to us today. That in the midst, in the pain, and the broken, God shows up.
He shows up with joy too, but I think that in the midst of the pain and the broken, we sometimes are more willing to see.
Yep. And I think that actually combines. So God showing up in the brokenness helps us see the light in the darkness. And those are those like little sparks of joy that help remind us that God's with us. So we prepared something that we'll be able to share out later, that we've created graphics that one have the prayer of St. Francis. So you can use those if you want. St. Patrick, sorry. St. Francis, also
That's
cool. Different guy.
But not what we're talking about.
Yep, right. Yeah. St. Patrick. So we have a graphic that you can make the home screen on your phone or that you can share on socials. We also have a graphic that helps you remember to pay attention for the little things that spark joy. Like Colleen was saying, like, what is that one thing you can do today that'll remind you, like, I'm alive and God is with me? And so if you can do those things, I think that's a really helpful reminder through all of this. So we'll be sharing those out later. But Colleen, this was awesome. We are so glad that you were here. For our prayer, what if we do the prayer of St. Patrick? I think that's a good way to do that. So if you all will pray with us. God, may we remember that Christ is with us, Christ is before us, Christ is behind us, Christ is in us. Christ is beneath us, Christ is above us, Christ is on our right and on our left. Christ is with us when we lay down. Christ is with us when we sit down. Christ is with us when we arise. Christ is in the heart of everyone who thinks of us. Christ is in the mouth of everyone who speaks of us. Christ in the eyes that see us, and Christ in every ear that hears us. May it be so this week and beyond. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.